Hi everybody, thank you all for registering and joining today's webinar. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to come join us. And welcome to today's webinar where we'll be covering the very important topic of Windows 10 end of support and covering what that means, and in the same discussion presenting a secure, efficient, cost-effective solution to deliver Windows 11 applications jointly with Tenzig and Omnissa. I'm Kevin Greenway and I'm your host as well as co-presenter today. And I'm really pleased to be joined by Jeff Ulatowski, who is my fellow co-presenter. Jeff, do you want to give a quick hello?
Hey, how's it going? Looking forward to it.
Thanks, Jeff. So before we jump in, I want to cover some housekeeping for today's session. Firstly, the session is being recorded and the recording will be posted to you following today's session. So that you'll be sent an email with the recording. All attendees will be muted throughout the webinar, but there is an opportunity to ask questions in the questions panel under the GoToWebinar control panel if you've seen that or used this tool before. And these will be reviewed and answered at the end of today's session by Jeff and myself. A copy of the PowerPoint and accompanying information will be shared following today's webinar. And additionally, you can find the slide deck and accompanying resources under the handout section under the GoToWebinar control panel. There will be some polls throughout, so we will announce them as they appear, and they will appear on screen, permitting you to respond. We do really appreciate your participation on these, as it really helps gauge our audience and the relevance and why you're here today. So if you could take the time to respond to these, we'd really appreciate it. Thanks. And thanks again. And with that, let's get started. So firstly, to cover today's presenter introductions. So as mentioned, I'm Kevin Greenway, CTO for Tenzig, and I've been with Tenzig now for 13 years. So I oversee our technical teams, including our R&D and support teams. And I also work closely with our sales and marketing and other teams internally in our overall strategy, and enjoy a great working relationship with many employees at Omnissa. And specifically today, I'm really excited to be working alongside Jeff. It's been really enjoyable as we've worked together in producing today's content ready for today. So with that, I'll turn to you, Jeff.
Thanks, Kevin. And I agree with that sentiment. It's been a lot of fun, and I think we got a lot of stuff that we'll be showing today. I'm Jeff Ulatowski. I work at Omnissa, running the apps business here at Omnissa, focused on the direction of our app management products, App Volumes, DEM, ThinApp, as well as part of the broader Horizon portfolio. So really excited to be here to talk about those things. Apps is a big thing in my mind, and I know it's really important to the businesses as well. A lot of history working with applications, both as a customer and as an engineer, and now in a product management direction capacity. So looking forward to presenting with you, Kevin, and giving these guys something fun to watch.
Yeah, me too. Thanks a lot, Jeff. And so with that, we're going to stop sharing our webcams at this point just to ease the any further distraction, and then we'll go through and run through the agenda. So jumping into today's agenda, I want to call out some important parts of what we'll be covering. So firstly, for those that are not aware what our joint partnership and relationship looks like, we've already spoken about that a couple of times, but really what it means is value for you, the attendees joining today. And then we'll then cover the key topic of today, which is the Windows 10 end of support, and specifically the risks and impact to your business. We'll then dive into the proposed solution to enable you to move away from the Windows end of support headaches for Windows 10 before diving into the combined solution components from both Omnissa and Tenzig before we show you a demo so you can see firsthand what things look like in action. But most importantly, today's agenda and solution offering is about promoting TCO savings. We all know how businesses are under stress and tension these days with regards to budget and spend. So we'll be covering what that looks like from a monetary perspective. And we're really excited to show you the full impact of these savings on offer. And then as mentioned, finally, we'll cover our wrap up and any questions that have come in throughout the webinar. So kicking off with the Tenzig and Omnissa partnership, the joint partnership by Tenzig and Omnissa being formerly VMware EUC division, is a long-standing partnership dating back to circa 2009. So our focus at Tenzig has been on the support of Horizon VDI and published apps, working with Omnissa right back to the infancy of supporting early PC over IP connectivity adoption and the explosion around the sort of early to mid 2010s of VDI. So we offer a wide available array of clients in our ecosystem for supporting Horizon and Workspace ONE based on Linux and Windows client with a wide array of client-based features. And most recently, we've been working on our own integrated secure browser and Workspace ONE joint initiatives, which offer mutual benefit for Omnissa Horizon deployments, both current and future. We also work closely together with Omnissa Ready and the TAP program. So TAP is the Technology Alliance Partner Program. And this is the program which requires Tenzig to certify our clients. And this has led to a vast number of combined deployments significantly over the past 10 years, covering various verticals, notably federal, local government, defense and military, healthcare, finance, education, retail. And I appreciate there's a lot there, but they are the main verticals that we play into, but not restricted really to any. So Jeff, I've covered a few points, but is there anything that you can say towards the joint partnership between Tenzig and Omnissa?
Yeah, so I think the partnership's been really good, and I think what I found that I really appreciate is that the close collaboration, including the teams working together, across the different businesses and functions, product management, marketing, support. And we're really been working together and bringing content together, like even today's session, to the audience. So looking forward to continuing that partnership and really driving real value. And there's a lot packed in later on to talk about that value as we go through as we crunch some numbers and look at really what these companies can save.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. So moving then on to today's key topic, which is the imminency of the Windows 10 end of support, and really barely 2 months away now. So more importantly, what this means for your business now and then moving forwards. And what might surprise you is as I mentioned, we're barely 2 months away from that end of life or end of support date. But as you can see at the time of writing, there are still almost 60% of PCs which are running Windows 10. And even more, as this equates to a staggering 1.3 billion Windows devices. So let's spend some time talking through these risks, all of which at some point will have to be factored in, whether you remain with Windows 10 or consider upgrade options. So first, security. It's probably the most obvious, but should also be of concern, where all business should be on high alert as far as security is concerned. As our workforces remain remote and or hybrid, the exposure from a security perspective is greater than ever. And come end of life and end of support, Windows 10 will no longer receive those critical security updates. And there will be exposure over time, and this will become an increasingly bigger concern the more time that lapses this end of support date. And then we move on to compliance. So from a compliance standpoint, depending on location and vertical, Windows 10 will no longer offer compliancy, and many organizations will either be exposed to increased costs and penalties and or fall completely out of compliance if they remain on Windows 10. We then move to compatibility. So for a long time, Windows 10 has been the OS of choice for many organizations. But as the time passes, compatibility of both software and peripherals, not forget, will move away from Windows 10, leaving companies and IT departments grappling with backwards compatibility. We then go to upgrade costs. So one of the biggest issues putting many businesses under pressure with the Windows 11 upgrade are the potential hardware upgrades involved in upgrading from Windows 10 to Windows 11. And the most common factor being the mandatory requirement for TPM, or as it's short, Trusted Platform Module. Finally, what about operational disruption, either through workflow slowdowns caused by some of these issues explained, as well as any retraining to employees that might be required, both from a technical implementation and user perspective. So Jeff, we've covered the risks of sitting back and doing nothing. And as an IT professional experiencing this topic, Can you help talk through educating the audience on what options exist?
Sure. So as far as the options that we found that as far as Windows 10 end of support, and this is a game we've played multiple times. You know, obviously each time Windows comes to an end of support for a version, and folks are looking to migrate to the next one. The games are pretty much the same, and it's that you can upgrade your desktops to Windows 11. That's probably the very obvious one right there. You can purchase extended support, and that's something that a lot of customers sometimes often opt to do. You can migrate Windows 10 desktops to a Microsoft solution that includes ESU, and some customers have looked into that as well. And of course, sometimes the most obvious or the least obvious one is just accepting the risks, and that obviously is sometimes people do that without even realizing they're doing that. And then finally, the one that we're going to talk about today, which is to adopt a transformative approach to deliver Windows 11 applications while extending that life of existing devices. This might be a good time to poll our listeners and see if there's some information about what they're finding in their environment.
Yeah, I completely agree. So let's launch the poll. And again, this is where we would really appreciate your participation. So I'll launch it right now. And we'd love to hear from you in terms of what your organization's plan for Windows 10 to Windows 11 transition looks like. There was, unfortunately, a sixth one there, which is probably an obvious one that you've already in that path, or you've effectively already gone down that path. So we were limited to 5 options, unfortunately, but guessing if you're here today, you probably are in the process of going through or looking at this transition. So I can see people are voting. We're getting a good amount of participation. I'm just going to leave it for a few more seconds just to make sure we get all the votes coming in. So it's still coming in. And we've got at the moment about 64% of you voting. We jumped up to 72, 74. It's like a game show, but it's and it's still going up. So we're up to about 80% voted now, which is fantastic. I'm going to close the poll at that point.
Good.
Give it a moment to catch. And then what I'm going to do is share those results on screen. So interestingly, those results look, very focused and biased towards upgrade desktops to Windows 11. So Jeff, that makes mine and your job today even more difficult, doesn't it? Well, not difficult, but a real proposition of making our solutions so enticing for these attendees who have joined today.
Well, I am glad to know that folks are willing to take action and they're not just all accepting the risk. That would have been a hard one to digest. So I really appreciate that our customers are willing to make this jump, but maybe there's a better option and a less costly option for them.
Definitely. So yeah, thanks again for everybody's participation on that one. Let's go forwards. So I'm going to start with really from a high level perspective, jumping in to see how we can jointly deliver Windows 11 applications together with Tenzing and Omnissa. Now, the first 3 steps, Jeff's going to be diving into those in more detail, and they're really about transitioning from the traditional model of consuming local apps on Windows 10 devices as physical devices and migrating them into apps on demand, which can then be consumed both locally and remotely, and then migrating users towards Horizon published apps, which are accessed on demand locally or remotely again. But then step 4, I hear you ask, is this comes into question when talking about the existing hardware in place. So if you're doing the app migration, as Jeff will cover in steps 1 to 3, what then happens with those existing assets? Should we refresh those and throw the existing devices in the landfill, or can we extend the life and delay the refresh? And the great news is by decoupling the apps from the physical desktop, the choice becomes yours with Tenzing and Omnissa, as you'll see. So to recap again, steps 1 to 3 are moving those apps away from the physical desktops, and step 4 becomes repurposing the existing hardware to delay the refresh and to delay potential additional cost. And to do this, we convert the existing Windows 10 OS which again becomes end of support, into Tenzig Repurpose. And Tenzig Repurpose is a Linux-based secure managed OS, easily configurable to access those apps on demand on your existing hardware. And with the combined Tenzig Omnissa solution, the ability to choose delay in the hardware refresh really comes into play as far as TCO savings, as we'll see later. And as we'll see later, there are options too in order to replace hardware where required with Tenzig, which in addition brings further TCO reduction. So all great news. And better still, with this solution example, we can mitigate the requirement for client hardware supporting TPM. And TPM is a base requirement for Windows 11. But since the solution that we're going to talk through virtualizes Windows 11 desktops or apps using this model, the physical TPM requirement moves away. So in closing, this is, as mentioned, a really high-level overview of the solution we're about to present. And I'll turn this over to Jeff, who can delve into greater detail. So take it away, please, Jeff.
That's great. Happy to do so. So if we take a look at the this next slide here, let me go ahead and see if I can take control.
You have it?
I think so. If I'm moving it, then I've got it. Okay, great. So you can see here that we've got an end user. It all starts with the end user and a Windows desktop setup here with multiple applications on that desktop. So if we walk through the solution example, what we'll see, just see if I can, looks like it wants to, when I click, go backwards. Yeah, I'm going backwards with the click. Okay. So I think you're going to need to drive forward. Oh, wait, there we go.
There we go. Just tell me when you're ready and I'll move it forwards, Jeff.
Yeah, if you could move forward, that'd be great. So we'll take them through steps. So step one, UEM, managing the endpoint address. Endpoint will, if you bring in UEM as a solution, it will allow you to manage the endpoints and provide a much stronger, secure option for managing your endpoint and any installed applications on those endpoints. With step number two, you have the ability to bring in our intelligent hub for a single place to go to manage all of those applications, so that the user, or to access all of those applications, so the end user gets a seamless interface, a seamless catalog that they can go and select those applications from. You have Omnissa App Volumes, which allows you to drive that modernization of app management. And so you can actually bring those applications and put them into individual packages so that they're completely available across any physical desktops and the virtual solution that we'll show you in a second. And then you have the Omnissa Dynamic Environment Manager, which helps you to bring those settings, policy, and user experience to those endpoint devices. So for step three, what we're able to do is bring up Horizon environment with RDSH servers. These RDS servers will give you the capability of providing those applications on your secure hardware to the Windows desktops in a way where you're managing those. So they're no longer tied to the operating system. Those applications will be available to be presented to the user and accessed by the user. For step four, we can then access those more securely by installing the Horizon client on the Windows 10 desktop, and that client will allow you to be able to see those applications that you're managing remotely. And we'll talk a little bit more about how the technology of RDSH has improved by tenfold with the new app volumes, apps on demand capabilities that we have. And for step five, this is where Tenzig comes in, where you can bring in and secure the endpoint by replacing that Windows laptop with a Tenzig secure endpoint, giving you the capability of either modernizing that individual device or bringing in the Tenzig hardware to make that even more streamlined as you want to replace hardware itself. So this is what we've got for a solution example, but we'll take you a step further in the next slide, which will help you to see what this looks like from a single endpoint strategy. Kevin?
Thank you, Jeff. So Jeff spent some time talking through the solution example, and we appreciate at Tenzig there's no shortage of healthy competition in not just the endpoint space, but also the Omnissa Ready endpoints, which can be deployed to work with that proposed solution. However, at Tenzig, we're proud of the fact that there are differentiators in our approach, which are worthy to call out here. So a key differentiator is in our single vendor strategy, and many, if not all, of our competitors now specialize in either hardware or software. And typically the OS and/or management platform that is designed to support Omnissa either exclusively or along with other equivalent solutions. And at Tenzig, we offer all of this under one roof, and importantly, only this and long-time specialists in VDI and DAS, as we called out earlier. So we've already talked about our ability to repurpose those existing assets using Tenzig Repurpose, but what about the rest? So if your hardware is ready for retirement now, or you want an easy crossover in the near future, then look no further. So we offer our own modernized thin client and zero client hardware, featuring multiple form factors. And this includes traditional desktop-based thin clients, as well as laptops and all-in-ones, which are based obviously again on thin client hardware. Our OS is finely tuned to operate on our own hardware, as well as existing machines, as we've spoken about. And all of this is then managed via Tenzig Manager, which is our endpoint-free and inclusive management tool, which I'll be covering later. And clients love working with Tenzig based on the ability to work with just one vendor and not have to go to multiple either software or hardware vendors to get a combined solution that may or may not work in perfect harmony. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide, but it is worthy to just call out the four flavors of our OS and firmware. So on the Linux side, we have NOS, which is born from the past tradition and merits of a zero client, which is really where we originate from. And this platform is based on supporting one singular solution in Omnissa Horizon. And from a UX security management perspective, it's a breeze since it operates on a really small footprint and doesn't include other apps and dependencies that are required for other solutions. And PeakOS is our Linux OS platform designed to run on our own Intel and AMD hardware. Now, where it differs to NOS is that in addition to supporting Horizon, it also supports other VDI and DAS platforms, as well as terminal emulation, browsers, and more. So think of this as the traditional multiple function thin client OS. And customers may choose that where they're in a transition between different platforms. Repurpose is the same as PeakOS, but it's larger in size due to its ability to support all modern x86-based client hardware like laptops and PCs. And then finally, our same hardware is also capable of supporting Windows 10 and 11 IoT LTSC. And this can be deployed in other specific use cases for Horizon. For example, where there might be a need to run perhaps one or two local Windows-based apps which are required to run locally and alongside those provisioned in the proposed solution as discussed by Jeff. And the great news also comes from the fact that our software is flexible and can be converted between platforms without necessarily having to replace hardware. So real good value out there. So I've touched on this already, but again, let's call it out. So the question we're always asked when we talk for our OS is, what about management? And this is where Tenzig Manager comes into play. And also another standout by working with Tenzig, thanks to the fact that Tenzig Manager is free and, as importantly, uncomplicated. It's available either to run as a Windows-based app on a Windows server, as well as a Linux-based virtual appliance. And the Tenzig Manager can be used to manage all the OS platforms I just touched on. So key feature callouts include secure management via our secure connector and agent, and also the ability to manage our endpoints from any location. And with that, ability to deploy automatic configuration and firmware versioning. We then have RBAC or role-based access, which allows us to specify different roles and permissions for access into Tenzig Manager. And for the Linux version, I'm pleased to report that this extends even further, allowing you multi-tenant capability where you can limit administrators to either specific tenants or organizations. And of course, shadowing is also a really worthy call out in the ability to shadow both locally and remotely your users' endpoints through the secure connector. And this can be configured granularly for compliance and convenience perspective. And then we do have some additional features as well, such as power management and scheduled tabs. And these really come into benefit to the PCs, for instance, and we'll touch on later, where there are energy consumption or energy consumption comes into play. We can save power by being able to create scheduled tasks for different endpoints. We have the ability of doing distributed firmware versioning, where we can deploy and save on bandwidth for sending firmware to different location sites. Think of it a bit like a mesh system, where we can send one copy of the firmware to one client, which distributes to other clients locally on those remote locations. And of course, finally, reporting as well, so being able to report on all of our assets that fall under Tenzig Manager. So that's a little bit more about Tenzig and the value add there. But Jeff, let's continue on with talking about universal app management.
Yeah, let's start by looking at the 5 ways that apps are delivered. We showed a lot of icons and different products that we had on the previous solution, but I want to break this down for you. So we have these different ways that apps can be delivered. Physical apps, obviously, if majority of our customers, on Windows 11 are looking at physical applications, they might be on virtual desktops as well as working with published apps. And that'll be a little bit more about what I'll talk about today and why that's now a much more viable technology. And then there's mobile apps and web apps. And the reason this is important is that each of these different types of applications demand different types of solutions to manage those applications. And Omnissa's got you covered in all aspects there. So we've got Horizon and Workspace ONE UEM that help with managing those virtual and physical desktops, as well as a bit of a bridge on virtual desktops where we have persistent and non-persistent desktops, where the solutions work together, and we've made quite a bit of advancements bridging that gap between virtual and physical with the solutions that we've been working on, as well as Omnissa App Volumes, which is now bridging those gaps as well, being able to go across virtual and physical devices. Once a virtual technology for virtual apps is now giving you the capability of having a single app management package format for Windows, which is really taking something that was as cumbersome as an MSI and all the automation that's required there, and really making a much better solution for delivering Windows applications that's much more modern. And Windows has been potentially struggling with this for a long time. As you know, we've been doing apps the way we've always done them for so long. This really does give you a better way to modernize and also lift above the OS so that you're not tied to that Windows 10 as you try and move to Windows 11. And so as you see, we bring in other products like our Workspace ONE Access for single sign-on capabilities, as well as our intelligent hub. As I mentioned, I'll show you a screenshot of that in a second, which is our ability to be able to launch those physical, virtual, and mobile applications and web applications all from one single place. So stop having your users go to the start bar for this and a web page, internal intranet for that, and trying to click things on their phone for this. They can go to their single intelligent hub and have a store available for all their work apps in one single location. And then with Tenzig, that gets even more powerful. And then our DEX solution, that is where we see the ability to understand what's going on with those applications, the analytics, telemetry of those endpoint devices, and really have a robust framework for being able to manage those devices, the operating systems, and the apps across their full entire estate. So you can see this becomes very compelling to be able to have a single vendor to go to for all of these solutions. Of course, bringing in Tenzig, you're able to then modernize those endpoint clients using something that's a lot more cost effective and brings a low footprint to the end user, allowing you to have devices that can be easily changed out and replenished without having to do complex things like re-imaging and things like that. So you'll see this start to unfold as we talk about the solution a little bit more. But as I start to talk about the different technologies, we've got Windows, the Workspace ONE Intelligent Hub. I want to highlight this because I can't tell you enough how important it is for your colleagues and your employees to be able to have a single place to go. It really is helpful. I mean, I've been using this technology for quite a long time now, and I always know that I can go to my login.omnissa.com and get exactly what I need because all of my work applications are in one place. Of course, those are still available through the desktop and the standard traditional means, but I just know that if it's work related and I need to get to it, it's right there. And so this app catalog really does provide that capability to not only have the existing apps that are installed be easily accessible, but also to be able to find the app I need when I need it, go ahead and click it and have it on demand. So it becomes very powerful, especially with this on-demand solution I'm going to show you. And so when we look at what on-demand actually means and what the challenges are with Windows, Windows has all of these applications, and they get stuck on the C drive and the registry. Windows invented this registry, this idea that they'd be able to organize everything. But the concept of this registry, the concept of this operating system, is that it would just be one standalone unit. And as you know, when you have thousands of employees, that becomes very challenging to manage. And so what we can do with this traditional app model is flip it and lift those apps above the OS, giving you the capability to manage the applications and the lifecycle of those applications separately, as well as keep a clean image on everybody's machine. This improves security because you know that you've got a clean image and you know it's up to date and you know your apps are up to date. And it gives you the capability of replacing the image. If you need to wipe it out and clean it, let's say something you'd have like a crazy outage. Maybe all of a sudden you're walking through the airport and the screen started blue screening or something crazy like that. Well, you could actually just reset those machines. The apps will come back to the machines and you're on board and ready to go. Don't let one app or one device hold you hostage. Make sure you've got a capability that allows you to act nimbly and work effectively across those devices. This also, the way this looks and the way we do this on the server is by providing those applications on demand. So no longer do you have to app rationalize. No longer do you have to think about which apps are users going to use. How could I ask that of my IT admins if I don't even know what apps I'm going to use on a day-to-day basis? And so this allows your environment to configure itself dynamically for what the apps use. We're commoditizing Windows. We're giving you a capability of delivering applications to the respective devices, as well as securing them. So the top user, for example, that has Visio and Chrome open, can't see the apps for a different user, even though they're located on the same server and you're getting that really good efficiency of having a Windows server launch those applications. We turn that into individual sessions and give you the capability of delivering those applications dynamically with the Horizon client across those devices. In fact, you're able to launch them even on cell phones. You're able to drive that capability of launching applications and access those applications. It doesn't matter which device you're using at any given time. And so this is a capability where we're able to deliver applications to Windows sessions, dynamically create them, and then deliver them to any device with very little effort, because you're able to package those applications, you work on those applications independently, and then those applications can come and go to those devices as the user's needs change throughout the day and throughout the year. And so let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at this on a demo. If you want to go ahead and kick that forward. Okay.
Yeah, we'll do. And love the capability to decouple those apps, and like you say, to be able to deploy them dynamically and securely as well. So like you say, let's take a look at the demo. But just before we do have another poll which we're about to pop up before we run the demo, and that is to select, let's put it up on the screen. So it's to select all of the following solutions that you or your customers are currently using. So again, we can sort of gauge where you're at in the journey. And I think probably based on the previous response, I think we probably know where this is going to go. But again, we can see the votes coming in. We're at about 30% of attendees at the moment. So again, if you can vote away, we really appreciate it. We're up to about 50% now, so a few more. Just need to get a few more in, please. 54. Can we get it to 60%? Can we get it to 60? There we go. We got 60. Let's get. We're at 63, 66. So I'm gonna.
Oh, it's going.
Yeah, it's going. It's going. I'm gonna close the poll there, and let's share those results on screen.
We got a lot of overlap here, Kevin. This is great.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah. Yeah, we appreciate the response there. So very good. Thank you very much. So as you said, let's jump into the demo portion of this now. And in the first demo, so we can see what we're actually looking at. What we're looking at here is an existing Windows 10 laptop. So in the case here, it's actually a Lenovo ThinkPad, which we've booted. Let me just pause it right there. So it's a Lenovo ThinkPad that was running Windows 10, and we've booted it into Tenzing repurpose through a USB stick. The Windows OS at this point remains intact on the internal drive, and we've just simply rebooted the operating system live from the thumb drive. And from here, we get to see what our default desktop experience of repurpose looks like, where the user operates in the secure and constricted confines of the OS. So they've just got provisioned 3 local apps. We're not looking at Omnissa at this point. This is just purely the repurpose OS. So firstly, we've got an Omnissa Horizon connection for either accessing those published apps on demand or maybe a Windows 11 desktop, as we'll be seeing in the next demo. And secondly, a shortcut to launch the repurpose installer, which is what we're looking at here in the center of the screen. So where present, this can be executed to install repurpose over the top of the existing Windows 10 OS. So this step is typically done where that Windows 10 OS is no longer required and importantly becomes an ongoing security concern if it's left in place after that end of support date has lapsed in October onwards. So as mentioned, this doesn't just install the vanilla OS, but it also includes any other configuration settings. So at the point that we install this, this will effectively take the tattoo of the configuration and deploy the OS as is. And then the next part of the next shortcut is our ISO builder. So the ISO builder, if I take a moment to explain that, that will back up the existing OS into a custom ISO, and that ISO can be copied to the thumb drive, for instance, and that can also include any firmware add-ons that we may have deployed either through USB or the Tenzing Manager on top of the base OS. And in addition, all settings and things like the license as per the previous step. So the benefit of the custom ISO builder versus the installer is that it can be used to mass deploy the OS and reduce, if not eliminate, any configuration steps required post-install. So as we move the demo forwards, not too far forwards, I don't know what's happened there, but let me just bring it back. So as we move the demo forwards, what we're going to then see is what happens after the point that the administrator has configured the OS in terms of what they wish to deploy in the proposed solution that we're talking about today. And you'll see in a moment the difference once we get past, again, this part, forgive me for replaying this, but once we get past this part, what will happen is the OS then launches instead of the desktop experience that we saw in the last part. We get to see effectively the optimal security and UX settings. So that desktop experience is removed and replaced with a secure login portal to Omnissa Horizon. And at this point, the user has zero access to install or modify any local apps and is controlled as you require, either locally or through the Tenzing Manager. So at this point, again, it's using the existing hardware, but the user just has access purely and only to Horizon, whether it's published apps or in this case, a Windows 11 desktop. So the beauty of this really comes then in terms of speed and performance. You'll see how quickly it is to sign in at that point to Omnissa and how quick it is to launch and connect to the Windows 11 desktop. And it's really as quick as you see in here on screen. And that includes both factoring in things like the boot speed and the overall login experience. So at that point, I'm now going to hand you over to Jeff, and Jeff can talk to you in more detail about the app side.
Excellent. So if you could advance to the next one here. There we go.
There you go. I'll stand back and let you take control.
Excellent. So we're going to jump into the guest and what's happening in the guest with app volumes there. So you notice here that Office is not installed. in this particular. What we're talking about is apps on demand here. And so I'm going into that catalog I talked about where I've got marked a couple favorites. One of them is Office. When I click on that, the application is delivered to that Windows session. So you can see here, I've got Office. If I go ahead and refresh, now Office is installed. Now, that's one of the key values is that we can deliver the app within seconds, and we don't deliver it in a way that's in a bubble or separate from the operating system. We actually bring it to the operating system, files and registry, ready to execute. In fact, the files themselves, the executables for the application run in the memory and compute on that Windows machine. So as we're projecting this from a server to the 10-sig endpoint, you're getting the full experience of those applications. It's not a separate, isolated experience. You're getting the actual application. So that means, to get a little technical, OLE, COM, shared registry keys, all those things that you expect to work with applications work within the guest. So let's take a look at what kinds of things come from that. And we're talking about app lifecycle management. So you're able to do things, once you have the capability of delivering an app on demand, you can do some more creative things in your environment as well, and some more efficient things around being able to gather information from your users, around being able to UAT those applications and test them out. Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to avoid, at least as an individual IT admin when I was one, is those sleepless nights where you rolled out something and it breaks, and now you can't roll it back, or rolling it back becomes very messy and painful. So you end up putting a whole bunch of quality steps ahead of it. But what if you could just give users the capability of launching an application and selecting which version of an app that they want? And this is something that you could only do with an app on demand, that you could actually give them the opportunity to select between 2019 or 2024. And when they decide to click on 2024 to see the new version and UAT that version, we go ahead and update that version. You can see now Word is updating right there on the desktop, the icon for the shortcut changes. And it's because we actually delivered the real version of Word to the machine. And then when they're done, they can provide feedback and select what they would like to say about the application. So what are we doing here? We're able to do things that are more modern, that you would expect out of modern applications, but hand that power over to the IT department, the IT admin, to select which apps they want to do this with and gather feedback for those applications as well from the users. This really helps to eliminate some of the challenges you might get. I mean, imagine being able to see from 200 users or even just 10 super users what their feedback was for an application after they went ahead and ran the application, so that you can get that feedback and provide it to them. So the ability to do these things helps us, or the ability to do apps on demand not only helps us to create a more efficient infrastructure, meaning you've got less RDSH servers, you have a leaner system running with better storage. Your applications are not duplicated across every device, but they're running from a centralized location, and the ability to easily manage those applications by adding and removing them on demand. You also have the ability to up-level your UAT management, your lifecycle management of those applications at the same time. So let's take a look at what this is from a total cost of ownership perspective. Kevin?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. So you've seen the demo. What did you think? And as I touched on at the start of the webinar, really one of the most powerful things is the cost. And you'll be pleased to know the cost does look really attractive, as we're going to cover right now. So as we do the breaker slide here, I'm going to put some figures on screen, as you can see now. And the example probably does look initially pretty overwhelming, but before you reach for your best reading glasses, let's just take a pause and a closer look. So the TCO example provided here is of the combined solution that we've just demonstrated. And this example is based on a 1,000-seat deployment, and it's based on being costed out over a 3-year cycle, where you can see the overall cost as well as that cost as it appears as a monthly cost, if that's what you prefer to look at. And we went with 3 years based on that being the average life cycle of a traditional desktop PC, which is obviously the solution that we're pitching this against. So on the left-hand side, and notably ending here at the investment subtotal, this lists the components of the proposed solution that we've walked through. So this is based on using Amazon Web Services and Windows Server OS with RDSH, as Jeff touched on in his demo. And in addition, Horizon Apps Universal with apps on demand, and Dex over a 3-year prepaid subscription. And then finally, Workspace One UEM, again, paid over a 3-year subscription plan. On the Tenzig side, we then choose from one of available 2 SKUs. So first, repurpose, which again is prepaid over a 3-year subscription in this example, and alternatively a Tenzig Zero client. So remember, you typically have one or the other, and you may start with repurpose before you transition to something like the Zero client. So that first SKU is retaining your asset, and the second is replacing it with the Zero client. So we can see the overall cost per device is $939 in the case of Amazon Omnissa Repurpose, and it's $1,400 just over for Amazon Omnissa and the Zero client solution. And then how does that then compare to the traditional desktop refresh, and what do the savings per device look like? So let's take a look at the bottom line, and we'll work our way up. So we can see the net savings here are $604 for the repurpose solution and $127 for the Zero client solution. And that's in comparison to, and it's based on a Dell Optiplex SFF 7020. And in short, that overall solution for that Dell desktop refresh is $1,543. So you can see how attractive those cost savings are per device. And is there anything you want to add here, Jeff? We talked about this a lot over the last few weeks in planning, but is there anything else you can share?
Yeah, I was just going to say, as I look through the items here, just to kind of recap what you're showing here, because I think it's very compelling. You've got an investment that you're going to make, and obviously that's going to have a cost associated with it. But what we're seeing is after you get the value that you get from the solution, you're actually netting $600. That's actually pretty good. At $16 per user per month, that's a pretty attractive savings there. And then if you decide you wanted to actually replace the hardware, you could bring in Tenzig at a lower cost hardware solution, and you're still net positive. But I feel like there was more we talked about.
There was. You're absolutely right. So as well as those additional savings, it is worthy to talk through as we get to talk now about energy estimated costs. So as we saw, and you touched on, Jeff, notably in the previous cost example, we saw a smaller delta in saving on the Zero client versus repurpose. And this is obviously down to the fact that with the Zero client, we're having to replace that physical client hardware. And whilst it is, as you touched on, cheaper in the case of the Zero client, there are then more savings to be made. And one of the long-standing benefits of thin and Zero clients is the fact that they play into green credentials, meaning they use less energy than their PC counterparts, based on the fact that compute is moved away from the local endpoint. And there are other factors in there too, but that's kind of one of the main standout points. So this translates to average watts required. So in the case of the Dell example that we touched on, this is 55 watts versus the Zero client, which is 11 watts. And when we run this based on the average energy cost in the US of 13 cents per kilowatt hours and multiply that by the number of the devices, remember in our example, we touched on it being 1,000 devices and the hours that those devices are typically in use by any business, this equates to a ton more savings. So in our past example, where we saw $127 per device savings, if we multiply that by 1,000, that obviously gives us 127,000 overall savings. But then when we factor in the energy savings on top, we're looking at an additional 50K of savings for an 8-hour business, which equates to 177K overall, and then an additional 150K of savings for a business that operates over a 24-hour cycle, like healthcare, for instance. And that equates to 277K overall. So yeah, awesome savings as well as the value. And is there anything that you want to add on top of that, Jeff?
Not really. I was just thinking that we all do our part to try and make it a better place as far as being green. But I think that this is also compelling to the bottom line and to the wallet. I mean, how does this tie back into what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, so in terms of tying that back in, we can see those net savings now where we've factored in those additional energy saving costs as well. In this example, it is based on the 24-hour operation. So again, those savings look more attractive per device. And you can see that here we've factored in that energy cost reduction at $150 per device. So yeah, hopefully again, everybody can see now as we draw the webinar to a closure, the value of the solution, but also what we play into in terms of cost savings to businesses. And as you said, Jeff, the green side with, playing into energy savings. So yeah, really, really awesome.
This is great. So basically the bulk of the savings is just switching over to the repurpose OS where we can get the value with the apps on demand solution and be able to leverage that existing hardware. But inevitably, a laptop's going to need to be replaced at some point. Somebody spills water on it or replaces it, even if they kept their old hardware as long as they possibly could. They're going to want to cycle them through. And then even then, you've got them covered with more savings than trying to go and try and buy another laptop. So this is really great.
Yeah, and as we'll touch on, some of those benefits really come into play in the benefits summaries we get to now. So I think, Jeff, if you want to go first with the benefits of the solution from an Omnissa perspective.
Yeah, so in Omnissa, as we know, as I mentioned earlier, has you covered from a full portfolio perspective. We've got a lot of different products that help. You can take as many of those or as few of those as you'd like, but we've got that capability of fully managing your endpoints across your physical laptops, your mobile devices, having all the MDM capabilities and everything from a unified endpoint strategy, including even an opportunity to just go in on the Windows desktops if you wanted to through our desktop essentials. And then we have the ability to deliver new applications and that application functionality users more quickly. There's a really good app volumes IDC report that talks about the value, definitely available on the app volumes homepage, where you can see that real customers have gotten 90% faster to deliver new applications to users, been able to improve their performance of hardware by upwards of 40% to regain that efficiency. Reduce the number of images and time. This is directly your staff and the effort that they spend. Really just kind of take that down to just managing the OS, a single clean OS, and the individual apps, so that the app owners can manage those applications and be able to do those changes. So that ends up also being more secure if you can do that faster. And then, as I mentioned, the higher server and storage utilization, and then fewer application releases. All of this is available in that IDC report. And you should check that out. But definitely a big value from Omnissa and then also from Tenzig. So Kevin, if you don't mind.
Yep, yeah, for sure. Thank you. So first off, on the hardware front for Tenzig, as we saw, there's a lower initial purchase price than PCs, but also the other pertinent point is the longer lifespan. We really touched on sort of energy savings, but at the same point, there is traditionally a much longer lifespan with thin and zero clients due to the fact they have no moving parts and typically a sub 1% failure rate. With Tenzig specifically, as we touched on, we have the option to repurpose third-party Windows assets into being secure, dedicated Omnissa Linux endpoints, so remove that headache of managing a Windows operating system at the physical endpoint. We also offer, which again goes into the cost savings, the 100% free Tenzig Manager server, and that can dramatically reduce rollout, maintenance, and support costs. We didn't really factor that into the overall cost, but for sure that does come into place, and many businesses can save lots of costs with having to negate the need to send IT teams out to physical desks. Long-term sustainable endpoint strategy, so you get the option to choose whether you choose to recycle or replace in an efficient and cost-effective cycle, ultimately what suits you as a company, and you can mix and match both, which is key as well. So mixing a mixture of the repurpose software with thin and zero client strategy. And finally, the huge potential savings in procurement, deployment, energy costs, and annual per user costs, as we saw before. So we're closing now into the end of the webinar, and we just have one final poll, which I'll say it again, but we really would appreciate everybody's participation on this one as well. So I'm just launching that poll now, and it is, would you like us to follow up post-webinar to arrange a trial of our solutions or to discuss you selling our solutions? And hopefully there's answers that fit with everybody here. So again, I'd really appreciate as many as we can get here on the votes. So we're up to 30% at the moment. We're getting some good votes. We're up to 43%, 50%. We got a few more minutes to let this run, and then we'll turn it over to questions shortly. If we can get it to 80%, that would be awesome.
I just realized the question. I would imagine we would follow up jointly with the customers. I saw we have a 10 zig in Omnissa, but I'm sure we'll be as we mentioned earlier on in our partnership, we're working together with the customers.
All right, so I think that's still one more coming in, I think, but that gets us into really good stead. So I don't normally do this, but I think it's worth sharing those results. So I think we did a pretty good job there, Jeff, when you look back to that first poll of the fact that many of our audience were looking to replace Windows 10 with Windows 11. So we've definitely got some follow-up points, whether they're jointly or solely here, and some options to look at in the future as well. So thanks again for everybody's participation on that. I'm just going to bring up the final slide. We will go into questions, which I'll just start to review now. But I think, Jeff, do you want to just cover anything that's relevant about Omnissa One for anybody that might have interest in that, who's taken the time to attend today?
Sure. For those that know, Omnissa One is we had our first Omnissa One last year. This year and it was in Dallas. This year we're having the US in Vegas. Europe's going to be in Amsterdam, and then we'll have our Japan in Tokyo for our APJ region. So really looking forward to having you guys show up at those events. I'll be there. I believe Kevin or some of Kevin's team will be there as well. That's all awesome. So we're really looking forward to greeting you guys. Definitely come on up and say hello while you're there. We'd really love to see you.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. It's always great to be back in person as well as webinars these days. So we'll just turn over then, just in the final moments, to questions that came in. We did get a couple from the audience asking about recordings. Let me bring my webcam back into view as well. So yeah, we got a couple of questions in about recording, and unfortunately one person that couldn't see the demo, but just again to confirm, we will be sending the recording out. So if you didn't get to hear parts of it today or see the demo, you will be sent that recording afterwards, so don't worry about that. There was a question that probably might look more like it's for you, Jeff, which is, does apps on demand work with Microsoft Store apps, specifically X packages?
So it depends on the application. Some of the store applications are in the user profile and they write data to the user profile. Given the nature of app volumes, one of the requirements for app volumes is that they're applications that aren't specific to a user's profile, because those applications don't translate across multiple users. So if it's something that's written specifically for a user, then that wouldn't make sense from an application that you're distributing across multiple users, in which case you would just use our UEM capabilities and deliver. One of the really unique things about app volumes now is that we had the capability of running side by side. So it's not just non-persistent desktops, it's not just RDSH. You can actually deliver those applications to endpoints. So you can still use Windows Store along with app volumes, and the Windows Store apps will still work for those user-based applications that get delivered and written to the user profile itself. So you do have the ability to continue to use app volumes in those cases. However, we do not have the ability to deliver user-specific applications. They're meant for system-installed applications, things that go across multiple users.
Good answer, Jeff. Thank you. Looks like you've got another one here. So with the app on demand, can end users have multiple apps opened at once?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we get out of the way when the app is open. Once we've delivered the application and the file handles, for those files of that application. Think of us as almost like a storage solution. We bring the app to the operating system, and then we say, okay, when you run winword.exe, we get out of the way, and that application's running. So the apps can talk to each other. They can use all of the same functions in Windows. So it fully functions as a Windows application. That's what gives us that 99% compatibility, is because, and that is based on actual personal experience with customers seeing that 99%. We had a customer, for example, they had 300 applications in a POC. They did 1,200, so they did them 4 times faster than they thought, and there were only 7 SRs for some questions. So definitely, that is, these apps work, and part of compatibility is making sure they work in their full capabilities.
Awesome. Good answer. Thank you. We do have some more, but just with where we are at the time, we will follow up with those separately. So what happens here is we get a list of the questions that are surveyed afterwards. So again, we can follow up with those separately, whether they are Omnissa specific questions or Tenzing specific questions. So I think with that, Jeff, we can kudos to you. Great job. Really enjoyed working with you, and thanks again to everybody who took the time out of their busy day today, and I hope you enjoyed it, and we hope to see you again soon, and even see you in person at the Omnissa One event.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.